for any single people looking for love in Los Angeles, that if you think that it's worse than it's ever been, no, it ain't. No, it really ain't. You know what? Like, it's just a different version of some creep sniffing your towel.
Hey Lisa, how's your coffee?
Oh my gosh, it's perfect. Thank you so much
wonderful.
for asking.
So here we are at the very first episode ever of Melrose Madness.
Welcome to the Melrose Madness podcast, guys.
Yeah, we are going to do a deep dive because Melrose Place contains multitudes.
Melrose Place is a wonderful universe in which I choose to live these days.
We've been inhabiting, yeah. So Melrose Place, of course, is a evening soap about young adults in LA. It pretty much ran the course of functionally the 90s, from 92 to 98.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It really does. It's most of the whole 90s, actually.
And very beautiful people saying some and doing some very silly things very passionately. So I think it's good to preface, the folks who are meeting us for the first time. My partner Lisa here on this podcast is improv maestro.
Thank you so much. I've done UCB. I'm like getting really comfortable on telling everybody. I did a bunch of years of UCB starting in 2014, and because of that, I don't feel the need to prepare anything for this podcast. Basically, that's the too long don't read version of that. And Wayne, my dear friend, holding these note cards over here, clearly well prepared, is a stand-up.
I have been a stand-up. I got really sad in 2013 and thought that would help.
Even a bunch of other people.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, I think that a little gonna plan out the set list indeed. So that's a little bit of who we are in relation to the podcast. Lisa, I think we should tell people about our personal relationship with Melrose Place. What would yours be?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. My personal relationship with Melrose Place is that I was 12 years old in 1992 when it premiered. So, just a few years younger than Kelly. So, and by the way, we say that jokingly, but honestly, way to groom a girl.
Yeah, Kelly from 90210, part of the hinge of this, which we will get into, is that she's being courted and she is courting an adult, and it's not great.
A grown-ass man.
Yeah, so there you were, 12.
I was 12, and really, honestly, because Beverly Hills 90210 was the lead-in to Melrose Place, I was a little bit younger than the target audience, but that's about right. You're looking up to the kids who are.
It's aspirational.
It's aspirational. So I wasn't as into Beverly Hills 90210. It felt very, even as a kid, I wanted it to be a little more scandalous, and Melrose Place more closely mirrored the way that my sisters and I had our Barbies interact with each other, because it was so ridiculous.
No shortage of drama. No.
Yes, absolutely. None whatsoever. In fact, well, to give you an example, I loved Cheers. I was obsessed with Cheers when I was really, really young. Mm-hmm. And my doll, I had the only boy doll, and he was from the Hart family, and I named him Sam from Cheers.
Yes.
And even then I knew something that I would learn later and have confirmed on Melrose Place was, by me being in possession of the only man, I controlled who the women would come to. I owned the Jake, essentially. So my sisters had to play with me because I was like, Sam's my doll. If anybody wants a boyfriend, they have to play with me.
This is an innate sort of grasp on supply and demand that, I guess really gave you an advantage in that particular social hierarchy.
I was like, if I encounter a Sydney or a Taylor, I'm in complete control of these women because I owned them. I was a madam.
You were able to identify a resource and exploit it.
So yeah, I watched it the first time around,
and you've come back to it now as an adult.
Oh.
Again, and does it bring you back?
It totally brings me back, and it also, as an adult, who moved to Los Angeles in her early 20s into an apartment complex. And also, in fact, one of our producers,
Producer Ilana.
who I basically followed a couple apartments. I would, much like the people in Melrose Place, like a Billy sliding into Jake's extra bedroom. I would take over the lease, and I have since come to really appreciate the show for the complete ridiculousness with which these neighbors interact with each other. Because as somebody who literally spent her 20s and 30s in the apartment complex,
this was your milieu.
This was my milieu for shit.
Yeah, right. It's the unreality that was a template for what you expected that might be like.
And then exactly, and then getting to look back at like the 90s as this time capsule, it's just so enjoyable. I feel like there's endless investigation you can do of the show. Oh, I love it so much. But what about you? What is your relationship with Melrose Place?
I'm a latecomer. I'm a latecomer because
I love this.
Contemporary to this, I was a bit of like an indie snob type, and
great.
90210's spinoff means not for me, right? That's for someone else.
But also, for context, you are just a few years older than me, which now doesn't mean anything. But I was 12, and you were how old? You were way
16.
He was a cool 16-year-old.
Well, I was definitely 16. Let's say I'm glad I didn't peak in high school. But
like Kelly.
And that was my only interaction with Melrose Place at the time, was knowing that it was getting some artists I enjoyed, like Dinosaur Jr. and Amy Mann, onto the soundtrack, songs that you couldn't buy on CDs elsewhere, because that was the thing as well. And it was a bit of a chagrin that, like, oh, well, I've got to put money into the Melrose machine to hear, it might have been That's Just What You Are. It doesn't matter. Ironically, now that I've come to it as an adult, as a latecomer, you can't hear those songs anymore because we're not going to linger on this forever, as mad as it makes me all the time, but they stripped out all of the music by known artists for, at some point recent, because there's folks from the 2000s filling in the blanks, and it's just not as good. You miss part of the experience. I mean, I know it's not as good because you miss part of the experience. But which is to say, seeing many of the same qualities, many of the same charms that Lisa has in it, it's a real lesson in allowing yourself guilty pleasures. I kind of don't even believe that the guilt should be involved, but that I really missed out because I was too indie schmindy.
You know, I had one foot almost in that camp. I tried really hard to be too cool for school. Mm-hmm. But then, like, Mariah Carey would drop an album, and I was like, I can't. Yeah. It was that thing of, like, not wanting to like the thing that everybody else liked, but you're like, it is legit.
So they're right. Good. Sometimes they're right.
Sometimes you're right.
Lisa, one other thing that I happen to know about you that I think the audience should know before we actually launch into talking about the pilot of this show is that you also experienced Melrose Place as kind of an ambassador back to you of what American culture was. Isn't that right?
Oh
because
my gosh,
you were watching it from where?
Germany. I watched the entirety that I watched of Melrose Place as a kid. I watched on an army base in Germany because I grew up on Benjamin Franklin Village in Mannheim from 1988 until 1997. And by that point, I wasn't watching Melrose Place anymore. But yes, exactly. It was this template for what young professional adults were doing in the big city in the United States. Yeah. And yeah, it was definitely my Barbies. Like this was like the life that like my Barbies would have.
An intersection has occurred.
Yes.
So we just a few moments ago finished rewatching for the nth time the first episode ever of Melrose Place, the pilot. Air date was in July 1992, and I think that it's worthy for us to start with the first character we meet or don't meet, which is Natalie Miller. Natalie Miller. Never see her face.
Oh my God! I was gonna say you don't see her face. You do see the face of the person I'm about to mention, but Laura Palmer
Yeah.
Another
right,
character who is spoken of very aggressively.
And there is that thing where Twin Peaks ended just before Melrose Place began.
Before Melrose Place began, and I'm just going to throw this out there. I do hold on to the theory that at least in some of those early episodes, you can see the writers kind of borrowing from things that were popular.
Oh yeah.
In the atmosphere.
Yes.
And so I feel like keep an eye out for what I think are like just rip-off moments that they tried to do from Twin Peaks, doing their version of that. But
sometimes if it's what I'm thinking of, those would end up being some of the best moments of the show.
100%, because I find I find Twin Peaks very over the, it's just crazy.
Oh, it's a soap opera.
It's a soap opera.
In part.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, that is something that
there's some resonances we're going to look out for.
But yes, Natalie.
So who is Natalie anyways, and what's she doing? She's leaving. Natalie, we only see the cool cowboy boots, the spider on the leather jacket. We know about her that she's the kind of person who's going to tear her name off of the mailbox on the way out.
Also, it really does seem that she leaves moments before Alison wakes up. She leaves just in time to hear her bitchy little roommate say, "Hey, make me some coffee. It's time for you to make me coffee."
Alison in some ways seems to be our main character. She is the A story of the show. She is blonde, fairly fresh out of college, just starting out in her career as a receptionist at D&D Advertising.
Yes.
What can we say about Alison?
Alison immediately makes her problem the problem of the entire apartment complex.
That's how we're introduced to her.
That is how we see this woman. She didn't even have time to put pants on.
And always sort of outraged with the world sends back to her. Like
cannot fathom.
If there was one noise I could use to sum up Alison, it would be that's
the frustrated I thought you would, because the thing is, once she becomes friends with Billy, or once Billy becomes her roommate, then it evolves to Billy.
Yeah, well, right. Like they're entangled. They're entangled, those two. And this leads us to her problem. The A story of the episode here in glamorous Los Angeles at Melrose Place is her roommate's taken off on her, and she needs to make rent. So she needs to find another roommate in a hurry, due to the fact that there's a remarkably quick window for eviction at Melrose Place.
And Amanda's not even the landlord yet.
I don't know what to say about that. But as we go through her A story and her entwined search for a roommate and some things that happen in her day job, I think that if I were to impose a theme that connects all of the threads and almost all the characters of the story, the theme would be men behaving badly.
Yes.
And we've mentioned Billy, who becomes the answer to Alison's slightly wacky roommate. Huh?
Yes.
Billy behaves badly in the sense that he is the human personification, the avatar of entitlement.
Oh, yes.
He's a handsome, curly-haired white male. He's come out of the valley, out of living with his parents, clearly well-moneyed, and for him, life, it's a matter of what's there in front of him to take.
He really just needs to pop that shirt off and let those nipples breathe. And Alison cannot speak. She's rendered speechless.
Yeah, and Billy, not speechless. Billy, very verbose. Our aspiring writer who storytelling skills not on display in this episode. Even just meeting Alison, where he sneaks up on her essentially at night. He just starts rambling his problems at her.
This is kind of a sidebar, but I do want to say it so I don't forget. I will pull it up for these early episodes. I took a screenshot of a poem that he wrote about Alison, because we very rarely get actual samples of Billy's writing. This poem,
I love it.
It really does reflect his verbal abilities. Like Billy is an author who speaks like he writes.
That's a lantern I'm going to look forward to hanging. This is a preview, folks. But what do we get? We get a guy who thinks your peanut butter should be my peanut butter.
He is has accepted
job?
accepted a job for which he is
Murray.
not qualified, not batting an eyelash.
He bounces a check because that's what you do.
You just bounce check.
He just thought maybe they'd wait to cash it. And as badly as Billy behaves, Alison is in the hunt for worse.
She somehow can outdo him at every turn. Like, as we were watching this episode, we are subjected to images of Alison constantly being aggressed physically by men who just pop out of the darkness.
The things that women put up with, and the manhandling that happens of women. So what chief manhandler in this episode, a near, and pardon me, and it's not handled well by the show, rapist.
Yes.
Is Hal the Creep. That's what I call him in my head. This is a senior D&D executive who is now kind of gotten his hooks into Alison and literally touches her body as if it's his property throughout.
I think that the first time we meet him, he's always like at her elbow. He always comes in really hot from behind.
Yes. No.
And he's also very tall.
No, he's tall. He's got this fist for a face. There's this classic. So in the 90s, you might find many an older man plying a younger woman with wine coolers. In this case, he's plying Alison with the wine cooler account at work.
Oh, yes.
He's going to draw her into.
That's letting you know the stakes. By the way, would not be surprised to find out later he doesn't have any clout or money. It's his wife's.
Well, that will be a theme that we're going to trace on the show. But speaking of marriage as an institution,
yes.
this is how Billy becomes not the worst man in the equation. Is after Hal the Creep has taken Alison on a date to a work function. On a hotel roof that we've actually been to.
Kicking off a long and storied relationship the show has with sexual harassment in the workplace.
It's baked in from episode 1. So he takes her to this rooftop party. A gentleman drives her home, takes her to her door physically, holding her arm, and then proceeds to shoulder his way into her apartment and attempt to rape her.
Yes.
And it is only the intercession of shirtless again,
yes.
Billy, her roommate, whom she's angry with about bouncing the check. He is redeemed because he can at least pretend they're married, and that's enough.
Yes.
Now she's under a man's protection. Hal the Creep is going to take his fist for her face out the door now.
Yeah, it's so funny because I don't even know that it's because we've talked off camera. We've talked about the idea of like the theme that like Alison's being attacked by men specifically in this pilot, and I'm like, I don't know that that's the case. I think it was just so baked into our culture
that it was okay.
Because
that's how people interact.
I think you see a lot more of that on TV where it's less of like, oh, this person is wow, that's really out of character for that character to be doing that. That's so problematic. And then later on going, no. They thought it was fine.
As they say in my country of origin, it was no problem. It was no problem to put your hand on. And with following Alison and the people who manhandle her, we actually in this episode, the pilot, get back-to-back scenes of Alison being crept up upon and handled by a man before
it's basically
Hal the Creep. Yes,
it's a match on action transition.
It's nigh on that big because
thematically,
producer Ilana is an editor. She loves this. I can see her big smile. Yes, in the previous scene, before she goes to work, poolside at Melrose. The pool is an iconic location. Our man Jake, who we'll get into in a second, straight up grabs her and plays that he's going to throw her into the pool. She plays along, but like again, women's bodily autonomy
does not exist. Non-existent.
And it's only changed a little for the better. But Jake is important to talk about because he is, for one thing, the Hinge from 90210. He is the aforementioned adult pursuing a relationship with a young woman, and Alison, not the only person that woman that he grabs. Kelly he grabs,
Yes.
our denizen of 90210, as well as Sandy, whom we'll get to. But you know, in all of this though, when you want to go to reflections of the 90s, you have to consider that this came out the summer after the fall, when Smells Like Teen Spirit came out.
Oh yes,
Which
yes.
was like
grunge era.
It was
the
not.
height.
Yeah, and it was the dawn. It was the dawn. It was a different kind of thing in the public eye that, you know, maybe even had a larger impact than just its sales. And I think to reflect that, Seattle, sort of like disaffected, flannel wearing,
heavy, like sarcastic,
angsty. Yes. This is Jake is our representative of that world for this purpose of this show, I believe.
I see what you're saying. Like how like Luke Perry was that for 90210. Like he's the guy from like the tough side of the tracks.
And so Jake's whole thing is, for starters, he is the handsomest man in the room.
His name is Jake Handsome.
He is so unbelievably handsome. We see him at first shirt off and actually reacting to Alison at the door with a sigh, which I think was an early clue as to how her neighbors think about her. But so Jake is a construction worker, and he keeps referring to the lot of problems he's got.
Oh yeah.
The problem right now is, should he or shouldn't he sleep with a minor?
And not someone who works in a coal mine, because we know Jake's very blue collar. It's easy to confuse that.
A minor.
Yeah, it's
someone in the age minor. No, never mind.
Well, I think that it's really weird because we have, if I revisit some other sort of like soaps at that time, Dawson's Creek, even Veronica Mars, there's so many storylines that like super inappropriate of children being groomed, and it still happens. Like, dude, Drake was like texting Millie Bobby Brown, or like messaging with Millie Bobby Brown or Billie Eilish, and so this is like an area that I still feel like we see way too much. But it is interesting how the vagueness of the language about what they're talking about.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like they're trying to hide behind that, because no one ever actually says we're going to have sex.
Yeah, like
or,
I'm not gonna
have sex with this kid, or I'm not gonna hook
we're
up.
The kind of show where we say fuck, I guess.
I think we are. Okay. Yeah. Oh my gosh, we're straight up. Yeah.
We'll have to slap a warning on it for the children, but
children.
If you can't hear fuck, you shouldn't be on this ride, really. Because yes, and this is where we get into Jake's sort of relationship with Kelly, the high school student, where he's hot and cold. He's yo-yoing her every time. Almost physically, she moves away, he calls her back.
Yeah.
And she gives him numerous outs. She's, in fact, to me, the more mature of the two. She's looking to care for him.
She's looking for him
to break up
with her. And so, many opportunities, but this is, well, I also have a theory that, like, this is a really great peek into the mind of the writer's room. And this is also why, guys, representation of who is behind the camera creating the content absolutely matters. Because if you are a certain type of demographic who thinks certain types of behavior is appropriate, then it's never going to be challenged. And it's so funny because we were just watching, we were rewatching The Office, and those early episodes, I'm now realizing, yes, it has been almost 20 years. And like a lot of these things that
do not age well
at all. And I think any kind of commentary on what is considered cool is, I don't know, I feel like, I'm sort of rambling, but like, I think
Lisa, you have a lovely ramble. I encourage it entirely.
Well, it's like, I think if there's there's a kind of behavior that a character was exhibiting that doesn't make sense, but it's what you do because that's what people do. Like, I think that's where we're finding all the problems, because you're like, well, then why?
Right,
Why is
right.
it okay for this person to do this?
In other words, it's the fact that it's a reflection of society
Yes.
justifies it when the action itself should not be justified.
Yeah.
That's okay. I think that is that ties up the Jake Kelly relationship very nicely. That it's
Well, and then me as a 12-year-old girl going,
this is
hey,
how you learn.
this is what this interaction is. It is her responsibility to give him all these opportunities to end it, instead of recognizing that he's the one who needs to fucking handle
The adults
shit.
in the relationship in a literal sense. And like, much to your point about euphemisms, there is that moment where they're at his apartment and at the doorway, and he's like, something along the lines of like, if I open this door, you know what's gonna happen. And it's
Basically, he's saying, you're giving me your consent the minute you walk in here. So,
or pace his handsomeness. This is what happens when females enter my abode.
yeah,
Is panties drop and the fucking stars.
Yeah.
Because I'm Jake Hansen.
no shirts allowed.
He's living in what was called the pretty person bubble in I think other contexts.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is all very interesting, because I do, as we're talking about this, and I'm realizing, yes, I was 12 when I watched that. And I remember in high school, American high school, because American high school is very different than German high school. I had just returned back, and there was this guy who had a crush on me. And I did not feel that way about him. I remember being pressured by my friends to feel a certain obligation of feeling bad for this person, because as the woman, it's my job to manage the emotions of the situation. And it's weird, because I even remember as a kid being like, or as a teenager being like, well, that seems fucked up. I don't feel like that's my job. But then struggling with like, how am I supposed to act? Wait, am I supposed to do the thing that I just feel? And it's just very interesting to me, like, as we're going through this, for me to start untangling, like, oh yeah, I fully like imprinted upon this behavior
thing that's crept into the gears of my machinery. I will tell you that as a former teenage boy who, not to his credit, exhibited some nice guy qualities, you were just really relating to your oppressor, because that was the view, was this like a little sense that like, I want that, it's owed to me, Billy.
Yes.
Well, I like you, we should go out.
Exactly. And
like,
thinking,
and
you have to give this person a chance. And I was like,
that is real,
chance?
And that is pernicious.
It is real, as pernicious, and it is something that I've noticed that like younger generations of women don't feel. That's an obligation they don't feel the need to take on. They're not having to shed it. So it is interesting, because this is such a time capsule for me very personally, and for you as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I that's a depth, as we talk about this, and it sounds like a joke in a format for a joke, that this show contains multitudes, but this is an example, I think, where there's a deep vein of sort of a reflection of what our society deems to be acceptable, what the roles that people are supposed to play with each other. And speaking of roles, we have an actress at Melrose Place named Sandy. She is the witness. She's the witness to the Jake and Kelly moral dilemma, because she's a beautiful blonde Southern woman. In fact, introduced as though she's Rita Hayworth, and she is actress, wants to be, currently a waitress at Shooter's, the neighborhood bar. She is a Southern belle. She is a export from the literature of Tennessee Williams.
Oh yes, she's supposed to be from South Carolina.
And the drawl is deep. Now, Lisa, as we talk about Germany, but you were also the closest in the room to a Southern belle.
Oh, thank you for that.
Your Georgia roots are real. How do you feel about Amy Locane's accent as the character, Sandy.
The accent, once I heard that she was from South Carolina, I thought, well, she could be from Charleston. And the Charleston accent is very similar to the Savannah accent, which is that very old school, upscale, Tennessee Williams kind of, slow Southern accent. So it's a very theatrical one. The accent is goofy. However, I will say, she is an archetype that, spoiler alert, doesn't necessarily follow throughout the many seasons, but I'm actually shocked at that because she really does represent like a huge segment of the LA population.
Yeah,
of
she's
aspiring actresses.
She is maybe the most representative, a transplant trying to make it at an industry that it's harder to do other places.
It really is. And then I'm also realizing that she's literally the only character who actually needs to be in Los Angeles for her job because she purposely came there. I think like I feel like, okay, Billy's from there. Alison's there to succeed in advertising, I guess.
Which exists elsewhere.
She exists, yeah. But yeah, like literally every other person's character could exist in another city, really, but she's not a theater actress, so she can't be in New York. She would have to absolutely be a Los Angeles starlet.
Yeah. Well, no, but I might even suspect that there's a little bit of a contemporary view of that, where like, if anything, the pandemic was in part a story of people figuring that like in today's context, you don't need to be for certain roles. You don't need to be there
Exactly.
Physically. And like, I mean, I don't know. Not to moot your point, because yeah,
no, but you're absolutely, well, it is literally the 180 of what all of us were told prior to that, is that don't even bother applying for a job in LA unless you live in LA. Because so many people, we have such an influx of talent here that you don't, it really, and it also cannot be overstated how incredibly popular this show was at a time when we didn't have all of these choices for viewing. Everybody was watching that show. So that little moment that I had where I was like, oh my God, this really formed like a lot of my behavior. We were all having way more collective popular culture television experiences.
Well, you're talking about the 90s, the dawn of the internet as far as the popular consciousness is concerned. You're talking about our own experiences as a very specific generation that remembers life before the internet. But is also like you're really good at the internet. I find things and stay in my lane over here, but that there's the in-world example of like the possibilities that the internet would open.
Yes.
Were not in these people's lives because this is 1992.
Yes.
But also out of world, sort of, we were still living in the monoculture. In fact, this show on Fox, which was actually an upstart network because it was like the fourth choice out of 4.
Yeah, it was the newest
Can you imagine? It almost sounds nice when you get that like very privileged view of the world where you open up a phone, you've got so many gosh darn streaming apps.
100%.
Three channels, now a fourth, and also PBS and some syndicated shows. But like that was I can remember not having a remote and having a television where I had to click a dial.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I mean, call me a dinosaur. Granted.
No, but that is the thing. If you think about the use of technology, even just on the show from 1992 until 1997 or 98, that is the entire the change of the way that people communicated with each other, the way that people worked. There is, oh my God, this will not spoil anything. There is a phenomenal photo that I took of Amanda with a laptop computer open like a goddamn, like open face sandwich. Clam. Just, she had it where the top of the computer was completely down. And of course it made total sense to her because this woman, Heather Locklear, would never have had a reason to have used a laptop
Not at that point in time.
No one would have had used it. And by the end of it, we're looking at cell phones.
Cell phones come in.
The way people are communicating.
They didn't even get cell phones on Seinfeld.
No.
Until late along, and it was mostly about how they didn't work. Now, we're talking about Sandy in that context, and you know, also to the gender of it all.
Yes.
Jake is the sun, and she is a planet revolving around Jake.
She's like the first of the archetype, I think, of the unlovable woman. The woman who just only exists to kind of chase a moon after a man. Like you said, the orbit.
Yes, a moon around a planet would have actually been better. This is a collaboration happening, metaphorically and in real life. Sandy then introduces us to Rhonda, who is, if we have an A story of Alison and her roommate and the creep, and a B of Jake and his moral dilemma with the minor. Of course, he takes Kelly for a date, 2 shooters. Sandy is
I don't know how she gets in. She must have had a fake ID.
Sandy, who has slept with Jake previously, is there to witness it. And then she talks to Rhonda about various gossip, because Rhonda, among other things, is our spy, our eyes through the blinds. But like, basically, we're talking about the character played by Vanessa Williams.
Vanessa Williams.
She's always looks great, but she is a black woman. She is the only
black
person
actor
of color on the cast, and we're gonna have a spoiler conversation later, folks, where there'll be more to say about that. I think
we'll go into detail,
breadth and width of the show, but like for now, her problem in the C story is finding a man. She is single and ready to mingle, and her class is out now, our venue for another man behaving badly.
Oh my God.
I never bothered to retain his name, but there is a very...
Ray Parker Jr.?
the man who bears a resemblance indeed. I just call him the towel sniffer, because that is his big move. Is post-class, he approaches our wonderful, bubbly Rhonda and gets a good, I'm gonna keep this.
Like, not only does it, makes a point of doing it so that she sees it. Like, that's a big compliment.
Like, yeah, like this is now you know it's on. Which, here's the irony within the episode, is the trajectory is he's trying to rope her into a pyramid scheme, essentially.
He doesn't even really want to be with her. Like,
that is dating in LA in the 90s, I suppose.
That's the thing. I actually find it very optimistic for any single people looking for love in Los Angeles, that if you think that it's worse than it's ever been, no, it ain't. No, it really ain't. You know what? Like, it's just a different version of some creep sniffing your towel. It may not have been a dick pic, but if some man were in front of you aggressively sniffing your sweat and say, I feel like I would be just as horrified as if I received
this was,
picture of a man.
For context for the younger audience, this was a time where the equivalent would have been photocopying your penis and then faxing it to someone. That was the dick pic of the day. You could mail them a Polaroid, I suppose.
You would have to tell them to like go to Kinko's to get the fax.
Yeah. So again, pre-internet, but
people had to be way more in person with their harassment.
Yeah, but this turns into then a solicitation, and Rhonda, a prototype for something that was born of the internet in its way, the influencer.
She really is an influencer. I didn't catch that until you were pointing it out, but he explicitly says people like you, they look to you for trends, they're following you, and I mean, it's such a hashtag justice for Rhonda, because we just feel like her character could have had so much more potential.
There were possibilities that were left on, like, very much so on the table, but Rhonda's storyline wraps up with commiserating, a moment of commiseration with her best friend Matt.
Yes.
Another denizen of Melrose.
He really does nothing in the pilot.
Not much. He acts goofy in a way that is weird, but he listens to Rhonda. Now, Matt is played by Doug Savant. He is a handsome brown-haired gentleman who is another sort of minority on the cast, so to speak, because he is straight man at the time. He was playing, though,
a gay man,
a groundbreaking representation a gay man, and still we've come so far, and there'll be more to talk about that. But in this episode, he largely functions as a foil to Rhonda, as a partner to Rhonda. And if we're he's one of our men not behaving so badly. I think he grabbed someone in the pool, but like that seems to just be Melrose etiquette, so to speak.
Like if someone's in the pool, they're gonna get grabbed.
All bets are off. Well, don't go near the pool.
By
if you
the
don't
way,
want to get grabbed, people.
I mean, that pool's pretty deadly.
These are all things that will come to be.
Totems.
So the last main characters, the last from the mains that we haven't discussed are Michael and Jane.
Oh my God.
The married couple, kind of the den mother and father for the complex, because they do act as manager, but they have day jobs. Michael is a doctor and a resident, in fact, in training.
A pretty straight-laced character early on.
He's pragmatic. He's put upon. Just the least tinge of a wise guy, and he is also behaving badly. To get back to our theme of men behaving badly, because he is neglecting his wife Jane,
who is so horny for him at this moment.
Well, I mean, we can talk about the horny moment. It gets pornographic in a weird way, I think. Let's do it. We see the evidence of neglect in a couple ways. One is that when she straight up wants loving in the morning, he's not up for it, but like her approach to a sleeping man, I'm gonna hang a lantern on it because we really got into the
sleeping men need to be careful.
Sleeping man is to crawl on the floor and kiss the big toe and work her way up. So the point we got to is all of that is for her own benefit, because he's not conscious.
No, he doesn't even know it's happening until she gets to the top. It's such again, talking about who's behind the camera, who's writing these scenes.
Dead on.
And so, because this is another thing, guys, that you need to get used to, is we have worked in some capacity behind cameras in many ways, and understanding how production works. So you and I both know, and you and I both all four know here, that what happened was the director said, so Jane, actress Josie Bissett, what I'm going to have you do is this is going to be sexy. Of course a woman would do this. Start on the floor, climb up, give his toe a loving kiss, and so what you're seeing is someone's interpretation of what a seduction looks like. And this is also another theme of what we're going to see a lot on this show, is these love scenes are bonkers.
Oh, the
love scenes are not sexy at all. They're all weird. They're so weird.
Times.
But it also lets you know how uncomfortable America really was with sexuality, especially female sexuality, or anything other than what they considered to be male, straight, heterosexuality. Yeah, exactly.
Heteronormative, etc.
It's so weird. It's just it's really every single love scene is so strange to me. Like every time the way that people kiss each other is so weird.
Jake and Kelly at the poolside is not great. Even without the context. So, another totem I want to get back to.
Please.
We talked about Michael in a little detail. Jane, sunny Jane, blonde, beautiful, bowl cut, all the B's that matter. Works in fashion.
Designer.
That's something, and just she sees the slack in their marriage. Fixes Michael a nice dinner. Yes. He comes in, and his method of avoiding contact with his wife and the love of his life is there's a book he just needs to read right now. Resident Dr. Michael Mancini has a piece of biomedical knowledge that he needs to cut through
immediately,
like a surgeon with a scalpel.
This is a leather-bound tome.
It must happen now. No time for whatever weird thing Jane had fixed for him, which I'm going to just bring it around to the thing about Jane for me is that it's just a moment, because of course that's the date night that gets interrupted by the bounce check. So this is our A and D stories interacting, and the next day, Jane tells Alison poolside about, you interrupted like a hot date night. We were having a candlelit dinner, and it's like,
Lies.
this is, it's lies, or I think it's lies to herself. I feel like there's a layer of self-deception
You know what, you're
that
right.
anything was working up to Mr. K ringing and saying, there's a bounce check,
Your
get the
husband-
eviction ready.
Your husband was fully ignoring you reading the dictionary.
That could have been anybody as far as he was concerned. I think it was just, what's not Jane in here? What can take me a little,
Well, I know, yeah.
So, but he redeems himself with breakfast in bed, and like he pours her a cup of coffee, which we'll hang a lantern on it now that we're doing the first episode. But coffee figures in often in Melrose Place. I think we do.
Massively.
Producer Ilana, do we have a coffee count? Do we not want to get into it? There are 2 times that coffee is offered to people in this episode, not counting the silent provision
The silent
of.
time that Michael shoves the hot coffee right under Jane's sleeping face.
Oh my
That's
God.
his, well, I mean,
Doesn't he also do this hand motion like he's like
There's-
letting her smell it? Like nobody wants to experience coffee that way. That's so scary. First thing you wake up and a man who,
Through smelling you.
by the way, knowing, spoiler alert, knowing what we know about Michael's,
You got the
comfort level.
spoiler. Let's keep it in the spoiler. I'm gonna.
Oh, okay, we'll keep it in the spoiler. Well, I will say it is a gesture. There are certain turns that Michael's character eventually take that are actually could be conceived as hinted at in this episode, and I just think it's funny to note that I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but like seeds were planted.
Yeah. They're weak ones because
But-
I don't know if they fully intended. It seems like maybe there was a gap. Maybe I maybe should have gotten into the lore some more. With the breakfast in bed redemption, is how we wrap up. He's behaving a little less badly now,
Yes.
and we close out with a pool party that brings, the whole complex to the table. Everyone's having fun. It's again a little violent for women. I think this is the scene where Sandy is yanked by the foot into a pool in a way that, like, on a viewing with Lisa, she was worried for the act. She was worried for Amy Locane that things had could have gone worse. So we can talk later about whether that is at all that sunny fun, sort of. And I've talked about this a little bit before, I don't know, but a little bit more about me is I was raised in Springfield, Massachusetts, and came to California for school, and a lot of the draw was about the myth of California that I did not partake in this particular part of it at the time, but I didn't have to watch Melrose Place to have the image in my head at 16 that California was a place where beautiful people that could include little old me somehow.
Yes, exactly.
Would be having a fun splash in a beautiful pool in a place where they all live in cool lives that are interconnected. So there was a propaganda to it. We've talked all our way through all of the main cast, starting with Natalie. Let's just devote one quick moment to someone who's absent, not with us yet. We've made a few references to Amanda. This will be part of the arc of the show because, in fact, when it debuted, it was not the thing that everyone was watching.
No, it really wasn't.
It was on teetering legs, if what we understand in retrospect. It was part of a youth movement. Fox was the upstart, and it was about, I think the Ben Stiller show was on there.
Probably, Simpsons, and it started with The Simpsons.
Yeah, Married with Children. So there
Believe
was...
it or not, Fox came in, if for you youngsters who may not know this, but it was sort of like the alternative. It was the alternative network.
That was Fox's place.
Married
in
with Children.
things.
That was the
Yes,
other big one at that time.
I might have called it Love and Marriage earlier because that's the song in it. But
Oh, yes.
we end up with this piece of the myth that did touch me, even though I couldn't see the show. And Amanda is Amanda's held a lock there. She will be the special guest star to come. We will make reference to her at times because she is important to things that happen in the future.
She's on here for a reason.
Yeah. She becomes the center of the show. She was the fuel that made the show a hit.
Yeah.
We won't have as much to say about her in between, though, but she'll come up as we sort of the perspective view is bound to leak through. I don't think we can complete this episode of our podcast without talking fashion.
Yes.
And there's a lot to talk about. I think we should start with Alison's robe.
Oh, yes, Alison's robe is iconic. I believe that she has it throughout the entirety of her character's existence on the show.
So we can watch for that, but it's a dude. I want it. It has the star and the sun and like.
I think Roseanne and Friends. I think either.
There was something about bathrobes that definitely.
Yeah,
went across
that
the wacky,
particular. No, actually, that specific bathrobe.
Thing.
It was that big, puffy blue one with the star and the. I'm gonna look this up because I remember there was like a whole. It kept showing up in shows.
Well, we'll be watching the bathrobe and we'll be talking about its origins.
Yes, that is the first fashion piece.
Well, and then you certainly Alison's fashion off on the clock is bonkers because there's that one moment with the red jacket where she looks like the Lost Mandrell sister.
She really does. It's so boxy, and it's their idea of like. Again, I go back to my Barbies because it's very. It really just feels so similar to me of like how my Barbies interacted. But even the clothes, it's like this is how a business lady dresses.
This is the theory that producer Ilana and I have gotten into it sometimes is that weirdly for a show that's actually made by adults, it has sort of a skewed conception of what adult life is like that almost feels like the view from adolescence.
TV writers.
Oh,
these are TV
they
writers
never left adolescence?
who never left adolescence, who've never actually worked in offices. It reminds me of I reference sometimes this Beyonce movie called Obsessed, starring her and Idris Elba, and the movie's whole premise is based on this woman who becomes obsessed with her husband who's working with her. The woman's a temp. Don't request her. But if you've never worked in an office and you don't know how temps work, you can write an entire movie about how this temp is terrorizing you. And you're like, I was a temp. Just don't have her come back next week.
One of my favorite comedians.
You didn't have to fire her.
One of my favorite comedians, Morgan Murphy, has a little bit where she said they made a whole movie that was called like How to Lose a Man in 10 days. And her punchline is, you shit on the floor. You shit on the floor. That is the reality-based, not having to go to the level of shitting on the floor, just the like, this plot shouldn't exist.
Easy.
So yeah, and I think we'll trace throughout the show examples of how the show is really out of touch with the reality that anyone would have known, even in the 90s.
Yes. Because again, there was no internet, there was no Google. If somebody's in the room and they don't know a fact, they can't just pull it up on their computer, so they're just winging it, man.
Something else that is perhaps unrealistic about Melrose Place is the density of hunky shirtless men. If there's a fashion for men, it is no shirt.
I love that you say that because not every actress is forced to be in a bathing suit, or maybe actually no, they are, but they're even a little more covered up at some points.
Sandy's in one piece. She looks amazing, but it's not.
It's relatively modest.
It's not risque even for what could have been shown on Fox primetime at the time.
I've seen every man's nipple after the pilot. We've seen every
Any faves?
nipple. You know what?
We shouldn't be judging bodies. See, I caught myself.
Well, no. I have a favorite because I feel like my
It'll be an
Mancini's
appreciation.
do kind of look like little pepperonis, and I feel like it's very on brand for him. I'm also very upset that he's not the voice of Mario in this new movie. I think he would have done an amazing job. Come on, Luigi. Just invest in my company.
That is a Michael we'll come to know. Other fashion wise, Rhonda just always looks great in everything all the time.
How is Jane the designer? I've never seen her. She always has the worst fashions. She never looks good. Rhonda's shit holds up. There's a couple of things, the 90s really have come back in a big way. Yeah. And I'm very much enjoying the big pants, the lots of fabric, the oversized stuff.
Which we see especially on Billy for a while.
Oh my gosh, he's just practically wearing boxes.
Now we can't talk about fashion related to Rhonda, although not directly on Rhonda. I'm counting this as fashion.
I like it.
For our viewers who are following the text with us, at the 3207 mark in the season 1, episode 1 of Melrose Place, the pilot, is an ass that fills the screen and stays on it, and it is a
cheeky moment.
It's like a medical.
Very cheeky.
It's the whole fruit bowl to me. I felt as though
it really is very.
There was peach and some pears and just all the parts literally in the audience's face.
Cherry.
What does that tell you about the times?
That you could have that is a woman who most certainly did not have to sign any agree. There's some woman's full ass butt cheek is in the opening credit, and we see it so many times, and I bet you she has no idea that it's out there.
Guys, that's someone's daughter's ass.
that could have been my ass.
I don't want to neglect fashion in the sense of someone who's only seen briefly. This is going to be another spotter for the audience, but speaking of the intersection of the Fox televisual universe of the time, if the eagle-eyed viewer looks at 5058 in this episode as well as 5108, we'll get into that in a second. During the same scene where Hal the Creep is creeping upon Alison and inviting her on a date where he will try to rape her.
Oh, yes.
Peggy motherfucking Bundy crosses twice. Like, this lady knew she looks great in her animal print and her red bouffant, and this woman knew she looked great in her animal print and her red bouffant, and she knew that how to get into different shots and even have a Sasquatch glancing at the camera moment, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree with you.
What did you see in our Peggy Bundy sighting, Lisa?
I saw a totem that you see throughout this entire series, which is all-star extras in the background of this show taking their moment.
Oh,
because guys, also, this is a height for central casting. This was the height of the time where if you were an extra and you had like a really fun look or you did something really fun for the camera, because they don't really do this anymore, I don't think. You could get Taft-Hartley, get your SAG card, and you could be discovered. And so you see people just looking straight down the barrel of the camera so many times. And she, I believe, is the beginning of a long tradition of some really entertaining background people.
Yeah.
Because you see her twice.
Yeah.
And
I'm thinking of a waiter who pulls that.
Yes.
For the benefit of the viewer, we're very in the LA context. This is we call the area home. Oh, you doing all right?
Oh, sorry, I had broken my arm and I forgot that like every now and then when I place it a certain way, it kind of hurts. So this whole time I've been just awkwardly moving it around.
Our viewers will be able to. That's an Easter egg for you. Is her injury manifesting itself in discomfort, and our listeners will just have to take our word on it. Oh,
but the Peggy Bundy extra
down the barrel. So in the LA context, we know this. I did not know this before. That there's a saying. There's sort of a thing that people say, like, oh, if someone is very stereotypical of a type, they say, oh, it's like he's from Central Casting. Well, Central Casting's a company, and it's a huge, and it's things people do sometimes for money in LA. Just regular people is
when I first moved to LA, I signed up for Central Casting. It's the largest casting company here, I think, in LA, and like they just provide for everyone. So everybody's going through. So the joke is, haha, Central Casting, but it's real.
So anyhow, I'm gonna connect that to again the sort of that is the it's the people in the show falling for the Hollywood myth that I can be discovered.
100%.
Get me that lady. Get me the redhead.
There are layers and layers and layers. Before you would see, young reality stars on Bravo wanting to make it big, you would see people. They didn't have reality shows back then. They had to be extras.
This was we were only coming to what I consider to be the dawn of contemporary reality television, which was the real world. As I say, we were promised that people would stop being polite and start getting real. I think let's get polite again, guys. That's my note on that. Is now that we're into the 2020s,
let's get polite again.
we've been a kind of real let's experiment with play again. I think a fitting way to close the show will be something Ilana, producer Ilana, has for us, which is just some representative quotations from the episode. That'll well, I'll do the first one just because it follows something we've said about Rhonda the Spy. Rhonda the Spy, which is something we will watch in the future of this show. In explaining away why she just watched Natalie take off on Amanda, this woman who is in everyone's business says, I mean, really, it was none of my business. So the self-awareness on Rhonda not as high as it could be.
Not as high as it could be. However, what I think she does by saying that is illustrate something that is actually very true about the Los Angeles renter is we will get as involved as we fucking feel like it. I don't know my neighbors. Many times.
Yeah.
Like if I feel like it's a very LA thing to like keep an eye on what your neighbors are doing, but not actually interact.
Yeah, that's the unrealistic part of this show is the pool party part.
But the creeping through the window.
That's 100%.
Oh my God, who's moving their car?
You definitely deserve the next one. Oh. This is from Rhonda's watching of everything. We have Billy comes in as a young stallion who is desirable, and even with Rhonda being the complex spy, Sandy has the scoop already because she's seen stuff go down at shooters, and she says,
daytime's just a dress rehearsal. Anything, and I mean anything, worth knowing happens at night.
This is some of the very pungent, beautifully done. First of all, don't let me skip that ahead.
Yes, absolutely.
It's just and also this is the level at which she's a Tennessee Williams expert. There was some pungent, fun stuff that just is not in tone with the rest of the show. The tone, which is kind of wacky now, and we'll get lurid as fuck.
Yes, exactly. Please.
I'm gonna go. Is that for you? You think?
Oh, I think you do whichever one you want.
Oh, okay. So, apropos of Sandy's view of life, she says to Alison at some point, "You gotta," and this is again more where she's written at a kind of a different level of the other characters.
Yes.
You got to learn how to play a role, and sooner or later, you'll become that person.
I'm realizing
this is multitudes. The masks we wear as human beings.
Well, I also realizing though that like this is also why I feel like her character didn't really go anywhere. Is like they literally would just
spoilers.
She's an actress.
Speaking of spoilers, we're going to get into. If you enjoyed this at all, you will really love us talking about the scope of the show on a little separate MP3. Is it going to be a different MP3 file? Is that how it's done?
We will be emailing people
CD-ROMs. Okay. We'll just get in the mail AOL style. That's our distribution method.
Yes, we will be dick picking people first by faxing them pictures of photographed drawings that I've done of Michael Mancini's nipples. I'm calling it a dick pic.
There's a protrusion to it. So that gets us through saying. Billy and Alison's little battle as roommates, and there's the key moment where they talk about what happens to the peanut butter.
And is this me?
Yeah, I think it's you.
Okay, Billy, you can eat my peanut butter.
Very nice.
Thank you.
That is, and it doesn't really need context. Actually, isn't that?
I will say,
beauty of it
feels like a real world reference of when Puck took the peanut butter, and there was a whole fight with the roommates about the peanut butter. So peanut butter is actually a totem among roommates.
That's right. He ate it with his gosh darn hands.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna use these.
Let's is there a comment section to our MP3 of this?
Yes.
So in the comments, this is post research for us really, but you can weigh in. I almost have the instinct that came after.
It might have.
Because that was already season 2 of The Real World rather than season 1.
I really think that peanut butter is really emblematic of roommates because it is a type of food that does not go bad, that not necessarily, I feel like eating somebody's peanut butter is a very big roommate etiquette, American roommate etiquette.
And then there's dipping the spoon back in after it's been in your mouth. asshole / power move.
100%.
So I'm going to take this one because I'm the most entitled male on the couch.
Oh, yes, it's true.
Billy lied his way into the Arthur Miller job. And this is, I think, my vote for actually even the title of this episode. This is Billy's approach to life. He says, I bought a book with the basic steps, and now I'm one lesson ahead of the class.
One lesson ahead of the class.
Which to me, as a human being, sounds like the most stressful place to be.
Yes.
Billy, immune to imposter syndrome, because he is the imposter. The imposter's, within the house.
That is, I mean, that is who Billy is throughout most of the show.
Yes. And now Alison back to Billy shortly after that.
Also,
You love this one.
I love this one. I don't know if I can be nearly as condescending as she is, but I will try.
The level of condescension is high.
Billy, I will live with you, but that does not mean I have to dance with you.
There was definitely a shitty chuckle in there some way, and so I'll take my most fuckable. No, Jesus. I'm going to go ahead and say it. This is what these things are for.
It is
it's
true.
It's an MP3 that people listen to later.
100%.
The most fuckable member of the cast, Jake, says to his child paramour Kelly, "I hate moral dilemmas."
Don't we all, Jake?
So we all, Jake. Well, on that note, I think this has been so much fun, Lisa.
Oh my gosh!
I think we've gotten through it, and I think that we're ready to talk spoilers in a minute. So
Straight up.
again, listeners who enjoyed what we've done here, there's a little more with a little different perspective. For those of you who are watching through the series alongside us, we'll be back with season 1, episode 2 in just a moment. Lisa, you're the best.
Oh my God, so are you. Do you need more coffee?
I'd like one more coffee.
You're right. This is madness.